Meeting set up. All right, we are now streaming live. I will close that and call the meeting to order. 7:33, and ask everyone, let me share my screen. And I will ask everyone to join us in the pledge. Move, stuck. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. And with that, I will ask Bob to do roll call.
Okay. Here we go. So I will ask, let me switch to this. Start with Trustee Reedy.
Here.
Trustee Tams.
Here.
Trustee Chapman.
Here.
Trustee Allen.
Here.
Assessor Trowbridge.
Here.
Highway Commissioner Young.
Here.
Supervisor Mullen.
Here.
And Clerk Claren is here.
Okay. So that brings us to public comment. We refresh the public comment form. I know we definitely have public comment. Okay, so I exported the 14 responses we got for public comment into a spreadsheet to make it easier to read. And then Bob, I can provide this to you for the record.
Thank you.
I'll read them in order that they were received. I'll adjust this a little bit. So first comment comes from Donna from Woodridge. Her comment reads, creation of a Lisle Township Mental Health Board would be advantageous to the community. I have read the bylaws and plans of the Bloomingdale Board, and I would contribute my talents to making it happen for Lisle Township. I was employed by NAMI for 3 years as a resource specialist. I chaired a League of Women Voters study group on community mental health services in 1988 and interviewed John Case as part of the study. I come from a large family with numerous diagnoses of brain disorders and substance abuse issues. The one thing I have learned is that every family has issues regardless of income, education, politics, class, and anything else. And always resources are scarce. The next comment comes from Lynn from Lisle. Her comment reads, a mental health board would be a benefit to all citizens of Lisle Township. Please vote to establish such a board. Next comment comes from Caroline from Lisle. I'm in favor of a mental health board for Lisle. As a parent of young children, this pandemic has demonstrated a strong need for access to better mental health services in our community, both now and in the future. Next comment comes from, sorry, come on, help me out here. There we go. From Holly Blastic of Naperville. She writes, I support a mental health board for Lisle Township. I have heard positive things from Bloomingdale Township and recognize there is an unmet need for services, particularly for youth in our area. The benefits to our community of this small investment cannot be understated. Too often, our police officers become social workers and our jails mental health providers. Bloomingdale Township was able to provide grants to local police departments. Naperville has trained many officers in crisis intervention and de-escalation. This was evident in their measured and peaceful handling of recent protests in town. A Lisle Township Mental Health Board could facilitate more training for area officers. This cut off. Let me just make sure that's not. Yeah, it looks like the original comment just kind of cuts off there. Moving on to the last paragraph. A mental health board would also improve the quality of life for children and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Illinois lags behind other states in funding programs for developmentally disabled adults and children. The mental health board could fund desperately needed services and supports for these families. The next comment comes from Mary Wu from Naperville. I'm a Lisle Township resident, voter, and taxpayer. As a person that lives in the area and volunteers with youth at my church, I believe that having mental health resources in the area would be very advantageous for all the people in this area, but especially the young people. Please allow the voters to decide in November whether we would like to see a mental health board for our area. Next comment comes from Donna from Woodridge. Regarding the mental health board, my concern would be that it is another level of bureaucracy. Next is from Paula Garcia from Lisle. Supervisor Mullen and board, I'm asking that you all vote to please put the referendum on the November 2020 ballot to establish a mental health board. This is important to my family and many other families as the stigma needs to end regarding mental illness. I have a grown son who suffers from depression and social anxiety, and we are still searching for ways to help him. A mental health board would give us a group to get information from and learn from. It would also bring information out that mental illness is exactly that, an illness, and people should not be ashamed or shunned. I feel strongly that this board is needed in DuPage County, as I know many families such as mine that would benefit. Please place the referendum on the ballot. Next is a comment from Amanda in Lisle. A resolution to place a referendum on the November 2020 ballot to establish a mental health board, yes. Mental health is something that needs to be addressed. Look at the amount of high school students who are dying by suicide just in our area. Add in COVID, there have been even more suicides within the past few months in all age ranges just in our area. Besides deaths by suicide, a lot of other mental health issues affect all ages, including abuse, domestic violence, etc. As we see this big push to have police reform, one of the recommendations is to add more mental health boards. What if you could call a mental health person to come to your house during an issue instead of police? Or if an autistic neighbor child gets out of control, instead of calling the police, you will call a mental health department. Something needs to be done to support mental health issues. Let's scroll down a little more. Next comment is from David from Naperville. I am a school teacher at Kennedy Junior High in Naperville District 203, which serves a portion of Lisle Township. Over my 30 years in the classroom, I have seen our schools and our community grapple with mental health issues. This includes, tragically, teen and preteen suicide. My Kennedy community is currently grieving over the unnecessary premature death of a rising 8th grader. While mental health is anecdotally a growing concern here and broadly across the country, what cannot be challenged is that less and less public resources are being used to confront the issue. I'm interested to know if the residents in Lisle Township would support the use of public resources for the establishment of a mental health board. So I write in favor of the resolution for a ballot referendum to establish a mental health board. Thank you for your consideration and time. Next comment is from Laura Clay from Lisle. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor with a private practice in Lisle called Forward Emotion. I specialize in treating people who have anxiety, depression, and PTSD. My practice is seeing a significant increase in levels of anxiety, panic attacks, fear, depression, suicidal ideation, marital conflict, spousal abuse, grief, and increased social isolation, causing loneliness, hopelessness, and helplessness. This is leading to an increase in addictive behaviors such as alcohol, drugs, gaming, and online pornography consumption. While I treat adults, I am witnessing an increase in mental health symptoms of my clients' family members, including their aging parents and children. I'm witnessing an increase in physical issues such as headaches, body aches, fatigue, chest pains, abdominal pain, and overall lethargy in many clients because mental health is directly related to our physical health. We need to be more aware, do things to prevent worsening symptoms, and to alleviate current mental health stressors for all infected. These issues are not going to disappear. In fact, they're most likely going to get worse and impact more and more people the longer we are dealing with COVID-19 and its consequences to business, communities, and relationships. This is the time to highlight mental health and do all that we can to help people who are struggling. Please establish a mental health board with the upcoming November 2020 ballot. Okay, this is kind of going to fall over for me. Okay. So next comment is from John DeCanto from Naperville. My name is John DeCanto, a Lisle Township resident for 23 years, graduate from Benedictine University, and an employee at a community bank in Lisle for the last 7 years. Some of you may know someone who has been affected by mental illness, substance abuse disorder, or developmental disabilities. They may have shared their story with you. For many people affected, these topics are personal. My brother Evan, having recently graduated from UIC Chicago, brought bright with life and looking forward to find an entry-level position job that would propel him into adulthood, suffered a sudden mental health crisis in 2015 that changed his life and our family forever. Shortly after his initial emergency hospitalization, Evan was diagnosed with bipolar manic depression. He spent the next 12 months battling his mental illness with various prescriptions, therapy, and 2 more emergency hospitalizations. In autumn 2016, Evan's suffering ended when he took his own life. In DuPage County, there have been a total of 927 suicides from 2010 to today, and the overall trend is rising. Drug and alcohol-related deaths in 2019 alone totaled 139. Often it is not until after a crisis occurs that a person or family becomes relieved and thankful to learn helpful resources are available. I'm writing today to voice my support for mental health boards so that the people of Lisle Township may find comfort and relief knowing there are valuable resources available in the community for those who need it. The DuPage County budget provides mental health related funds to the DuPage County Health Department, the County Courts, Department of Community Services, Regional Office of Education, and County Sheriff. Most of the funds go towards training and crediting staff, awareness initiatives, and putting people in touch with local organizations that provide most of the actual care needed. It is these local organizations, often nonprofit, that deserve increased funding. People living with mental illness, substance abuse disorder, or developmental disabilities rely on these local organizations for their ongoing support and health needs. In the stressful time of coronavirus and 16% unemployment, it is especially important for us as a community to unite to make sure that these local organizations can continue providing ongoing care for the people in our community. Voting for a mental health board can make sure that happens. Wrong way. Okay. Next is Steve and Jean Page from Naperville. Please support the referendum question on the November 2020 ballot concerning creating the mental health board and let the voters decide if this is something they would support. We don't know what our new normal looks like yet. Coming out of this period of pandemic, record unemployment, and massive changes to how we shop, dine out, and mingle in public will only add to the stressors already in place. Mental health is often overlooked and often not available through bare bones insurance policies. Offering the service to residents can only be a positive. Next comment is from Danica McMillan from Naperville. I believe that there should be a mental health board created. As a licensed clinical social worker who works directly with individuals with mental health issues, I believe this is overdue. We have to look at mental health as though it is as improved as a physical health issue. As we are in a pandemic, I have had an increase in clients requesting therapy and support. Being on track with today's problems will help us better prepare for tomorrow's solutions. We are living through a traumatic event with more circumstances to come. I also believe that the people should also decide, so putting it on the ballot will make this possible. And sorry. Our last comment is from Dr. Antonio Salvet from Lisle. I really hope the board approves a ballot measure for a mental health board. Suicide rates with COVID, civil unrest, and the rise of mood disorders among our youth are an easy problem to ignore, but one that will have a severe impact if not addressed. This is not an issue to sit on until things get dire. Mental health programs save people money in the long term and decrease crime. Please approve this measure for referendum. Thank you. So that was a total of 14 items received for public comment. With that, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the approval of May 13th, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
Mary Jo?
Yes, Bob.
There are 2 people. I'm sorry, maybe it's the gentleman's name. Is that Mr. Murray? I just don't have him for a record.
Mr. Murray? Yes, he's going to be our speaker related to the mental health board.
And his name is, it says Pop.
Yeah, my daughter set up my account many years ago, so I'm actually Michael, but you can call me Pop.
No, I just want to know how to, this is for the official record so far as other people present. So I wanted to be able to make sure I had it, but it's Michael?
Yeah.
Murray. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Anyone else that I don't see?
Thank you, Bill. I see Alex. So with that, we'll move to approval of the May 13th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the May 13th regular meeting minutes?
I'll move to approve the meeting minutes from, I'm sorry, that was May 13th?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I'll second. Take your pick.
Let me go with Mike. Mike, guess which one? That's will be it, right?
All right. Is there any
Flip a,
comments or discussion on the minutes?
No, that's fine.
I think there was just one spelling. I think there was a Alan spelled wrong. Alan spelled like the other first name, not.
Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah.
There's one other small thing too, a capital letter someplace.
Okay. Yeah, there was a second capital. Yeah, I just saw that actually.
And the highway commissioner on page 3.
Yep.
Yeah. See, I do read these things.
Yeah, your portion of the report.
All right. So with
Thank you.
that, Bob, would you please take roll call?
Okay. The roll call vote for is Mary Jo has had us take roll call votes for everything when we're having these Zoom meetings, so we make sure we have everything done. So Trustee Tamps,
yes.
Trustee Reedy,
Yes.
Trustee Chapman,
Yes,
Trustee Allen,
Yes.
Supervisor Mullen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Meeting minutes from May 13th regular board meeting are approved. Next up on the agenda is an update on the COVID-19 impacts to township operations. I'll give a little overview of where we are, and then I'll ask John and Ed if you guys want to update everyone on what's going on with you. In the supervisor's office, we are continuing to largely operate virtually. We are starting to bring staff back. So as people are comfortable returning to the office, especially if there is a need for them to be in place in the office, people are starting to come back. So Ruby and Jane both have returned to work up front and answer phones and deal with kind of redirecting traffic as people come in or call in, putting in place kind of the reopening plan for each level, each type of service. Food pantry will wait to change operations from the drive-up service that we're doing currently until we can accommodate large groups. When we do perishable distributions, there are easily 50 people there at some times. So that one's going to continue to be drive-through service for quite some time. But we have made some adjustments. Bill helped out making some tweaks to our office to create a workflow where we can protect staff and still serve clients in person on a one-on-one basis. So what we've done is if you think about our boardroom, there's 2 doors from the hallway. One of them has glass on the top half. We've removed the glass and put in plexiglass with some room on the bottom so that clients can come into the boardroom, work with Laura or work with Jim or whoever may be helping them with something, and just pass documents back and forth through that slot. And then they can take it back to their office, process stuff, come back, give them what they need. And they have, our client has space to sit down in the boardroom and work there, fill out forms, things like that. And that allows us to still minimize some contact for the safety of staff right now. Kind of anticipate doing that for the near term, see how things change within the state and go from there. That's where we stand in the supervisor's office. Ed, do you want to talk at all about how you guys are handling things currently?
Not a whole lot has changed. We're social distancing. Nobody's riding 2 to a truck. It's all individual trucks. It's difficult to social distance when they're doing the branch pickup, but they're wearing their masks at that point in time. We have borrowed the township's thermometer and we take everybody's temperature in the morning. With respect to people coming into the office, we don't really let anybody in. We ask all the people that are obtaining permits to just mail us the check or drop it off in the mail drop, and then we send the permits out by email. So far, everybody has been healthy and we haven't encountered any issues with it so far. That's all.
John, how about you?
Sorry. House Bill 635 was passed and the governor signed it. And the importance of that particular legislation is it allows people that were granted homestead exemptions for persons with disabilities, standard homestead exemptions for veterans with disabilities, and senior citizen assessment fees exemptions. All those people that got the exemption for 2019 are automatically going to be able to get it for 2020. So they don't have to go through the application process. That is going to, by that happening, that's going to greatly reduce the traffic that would potentially come through our office, especially with the senior citizens. So we are going to be sending out a letter. It's probably going to be followed up by the supervisor of assessment, sending out a letter as well, indicating that they will not have to come in and file these applications. As a result, while our office is still open, it's closed to the public. When people do come in, we try to address whatever concerns they have through the window. But we're trying to relax that as more and more staff comes into place. We have a lot of people that are actually, a lot of employees that are back. Not everybody, but we're anticipating probably by mid next week, we'll have everybody back. In preparation for the next phase, we've established sneeze guards in the entrance of the office. We have masks, gloves, hand sanitizer on everybody's desk. We do have a touchless thermometer to where we're testing every employee of what the temperature is. And then we also have the CDC identifiers for COVID, and we're having them initial that they don't have any of those symptoms when they come into the office, just as a way to kind of let staff know that we're monitoring this on a daily basis. As I said earlier, we're expecting to have most of the staff is already back, and we're anticipating that we should have everybody back by probably mid next week.
We just had a new person join us.
Yes, Mary Jo. So this is my law partner, Chris Welch.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, Mary
Chris
Jo.
is a state representative out of Hillside. He's the chairman of the executive committee. And I thought since we were doing an update on COVID, I know a lot of our clients have been having questions about like what the heck is going on in Springfield. So I thought Chris, who has interviewed the governor on FaceTime Live and also Dr. Ezike, could maybe just give us a quick update. And then if you guys have any specific questions, but he's been buzzing into some of our meetings, and it's nice to have him in an electronic format where we don't have to expend a lot of time.
Yeah. Sorry for not letting you immediately. I've been trying to like be careful with not recognizing a name. So
You're making sure you
for letting me know.
Porn people.
Yes.
Trust me, I definitely get it. I've been on some of those Zoom calls that people interjected in unwantingly. But thanks for letting me in, Mary Jo. Pleasure to meet you guys virtually. Trustees, good to meet all of you. Always good to see my partner, Carrie Lynn. Just wanted to briefly let you all know, if you haven't heard, the governor actually did sign the budget today. The budget bill that we voted on in that special pandemic session at the end of May. You know, it was quite an experience going through that session that we went through. I've been in the legislature 8 years and never seen anything like it, and probably never will see anything like it again. It's a flat level budget, compared to last year's budget. We did, on a contingency basis, approve a bill to borrow $5 billion from the Federal Reserve if, for some reason, we do not get the additional stimulus dollars from the federal government that we're counting on. But we do have a solid plan to fill that hole with the low interest loans from the Federal Reserve. But you can count on the monies that you're promised from the state government for fiscal year 21, especially now with the budget signed into place. There was $1.8 billion included in that budget for CARES Act, coronavirus relief aid. And a lot of that has to do with things like long-term health centers, small business aid, grants to businesses,
in local communities that provide health counseling, things of that nature, mortgage and rental assistance. I don't know if you guys provide that on the township level in Lisle, but I know out here in Proviso, where I live, a lot of those services are provided at the township level. So there's a lot of money available for folks in the budget, 1.8 billion to be specific. And another thing is we implemented an oversight committee for CARES Act money that went to counties. And DuPage County is one of those counties that's going to be subject to that oversight because they're one of the 5 big counties that we call them. Because what we're trying to do is force the counties to put in their guidelines to push that CARES Act money down to the local levels. If they haven't done it already, you should be expecting news coming out soon on what those guidelines are. I know news came out today that Cook County should be announcing theirs in the next day or two because the local governments, townships, and the villages in Cook County are pounding them on, hey, how are we going to access all of this CARES money that you receive? And so I wanted to also mention that House Bill 2096, I don't know if Carrie Lynn's mentioned to you, also is a township-related initiative that we addressed with regard to your annual meetings. So that, I don't know if it's been signed yet. I think it has been signed.
Yes, it was.
But that's some relief to address your annual town meetings.
What specifically is that relief?
I can tell you exactly what it is. Good question. It is, I'm going to go right to the statute. If the governor declares a disaster under Section 7 of the Illinois Emergency Management Agency Act and the disaster declaration is effective during the dates designed for a township meeting, then the township meeting does not have to take place. And what the township meeting would have to take place after the declaration is over.
It's the third Tuesday after the expiration of the order, right?
On
That's what I think I read before. I wasn't sure what was passed.
On the third Tuesday after 6 p.m. of the month following the expiration of the disaster declaration.
And TOI sent out a recent publication on this that I like assisted them with prior to the time they sent it out. So that's one of the things you're going to have to decide. You have to decide, do you want to do your meeting in July and try to get permission from DuPage? Do you want to wait till August or September? So that's still out there. So Chris, how about when is the state going to reopen?
Well, you know, we are,
know.
Technically we are under another disaster declaration that he issued. Well, I think it was May 31st or June 1st. So we're in phase 3. The great news came out today. I think we only had less than 700 new positive cases, a low number of deaths, and our overall positivity rate is down to 4%. Now, the magic number is 20%, and we are down to 4% statewide. So we're on pace for hitting phase 4, June 26th, June 27th.
Do you think Pritzker's going to like move up some of the deadlines from like the original ones that he was giving?
I'm reading tea leaves like I have been with him all along. And I get the feeling that that's very possible, maybe even if it's a week early. I don't think it's going to be 2 weeks early, like some folks want it to be, but I think he is going to move it up early at 4% rate, positivity rate. I mean, that's pretty good. And so I do think come June 26th, we're going to be in phase 4, which opens up a whole lot of things once we hit phase 4.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Did anyone else have any specific questions about Springfield or any of, any other things that Chris could update you on?
That's mine.
Thank you so much.
Hey,
Thanks
no
for
problem.
buzzing by.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. If you guys ever have any questions, feel free to, shoot me an email or something. And I pride myself on being accessible and on top of these issues, since most of them come through the executive committee. So I'll do my best to answer it for you. But thanks for having me.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Right.
So that will be something that we still have yet to talk about is the annual meeting. Like Carolyn said, we would have to ask permission to when we want to do it. And we'll get through some of the discussion tonight and maybe we can forecast, get a gut check from people on July versus August. So we can plan for next month's meeting also. Because we'll have to, July would be difficult because you have to advertise 15 days in advance. So just getting everything lined up right now would be quick to do.
I don't think we have anything large. I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
No, go for it.
Okay, sorry. I don't think we're necessarily asking for anything in this one, or we have a major thing to present. I know we want to update the building and everything else like that. I would feel that we'd be better, in my opinion, as clerk, to go ahead and notice it for, or do something in August. Again, if we had something pressing, but I don't think there's, rather than risk something, try to get out, have a short notice, have someone have an issue or feel like if we hit 15 days, right at 15 days, someone has an issue with it. I'd rather we be able to project, let people have confidence, know that it's coming. So if they want to have it at a larger, to be there, it gives them more time and more opportunity. That would be my thought, since we don't have anything pressing on this.
Carrie Lynn,
Mm-hmm.
what, can you go over what the if then was one more time? It was within how many days of what?
All right, so it's basically the third Tuesday after 6 o'clock, after the expiration of the governor's emergency declaration. If you want to move it up before then, you need to get permission from the county health department. Now, if the board wants to decide to have it in June, we'd have to actually put that on the agenda and vote on it and schedule it for June. And then we'd probably have to go ahead and get permission from the health department. I don't think the health departments are going to approve any of this right now. We're still at the 10-person limit, and we would have to have sufficient space to have everybody at the town meeting socially distanced. So I think I agree with the suggestion that we wait till August or September. You don't have anything critical on your approved annual town meeting agenda that's sensitive to the election, like where you need to take action by a certain time to get something on the ballot. So I think we're almost better off waiting till it expires so we can actually have a gathering.
If we move to level 4, is that not a declaration point? I mean, because isn't the limit there? What's the limit there?
That goes up to 50 people?
Right, that's what I'm saying. We still then have to get special permission from the county, correct?
Yeah, so it's a little weird. So what's happening is the governor every 30 days is issuing a disaster declaration. And then on top of that, he's issuing executive orders. So it's the executive orders that have the time limits. But the way, it was in an email chain today with a bunch of township attorneys who said, the way that legislation is written, it almost looks what they're saying is the initial disaster declaration, not any of the successive ones. But that doesn't make any sense, because then what it would be saying is that you have to have your meeting, it would have been the third Tuesday in May, which was before the legislation was even enacted. So, I mean, we can do it in July if you guys want to try to get approval from the county, but I really don't think you have a pressing issue or need to do that.
That was my question was, what is the declaration, like if we move to level 4, is that now a new time frame of a declaration? And if so, my understanding under that level was that it's a 50-person gathering. And to be fair to all our constituents, we potentially could exceed 50. Obviously, we would want as much participation as possible. So therefore, we'd have to be back at the position to have to go to the county, correct?
Well, so the phases are really in the Restore Illinois plan. They're not in the gubernatorial disaster declaration. That's what is so tricky about this.
Okay.
So the disaster declaration looks like he's going to keep continuing it every 30 days until the Restore Illinois plan, we get through all of the 5 phases. If we ever get to phase 5, which I think requires a vaccine, right? I'm not,
Mhm.
I haven't
Or
looked at
treatment
stage
plan.
5 lately because we're still trying to navigate stage 3. So yeah, you're right though. I mean, that's why, and I don't think the public health departments are going to like be clamoring to try to approve large public gatherings anytime soon. Their job is actually to protect public health. I don't even know if they know about this legislation that townships wanted, right? We just needed a clarification as to what we were doing, because some townships do have to meet because their electors have placed initiatives on their town agendas that they have to take action on before the election. So, but yeah, we're going to have to be careful. I mean, we might have to look at moving the township location to a high school auditorium or something where we would have the ability to keep people further apart, because we just can't predict how many will show up. It seems to be unfeasible to do this electronically because people have to vote, and it would be just too tricky, I think.
So one more follow-up question. We're not in violation of anything if we do not do one in July and we August. That's right. We're well within the boundaries of the what's been set forward for us.
Yeah, in fact, we won't know the latest day to have that meeting until the last executive declaration expires. So that it might even be September or October. We don't really know yet.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, so with that, I think we can move forward to the next item, which is discussion of and potential action on a resolution to place a referendum on the November 2020 ballot to establish a mental health board. Mr. Michael Murray is here, who is an advocate and was very involved in leading the effort in Bloomingdale Township to get that referendum on the ballot, and kind of advocate for the referendum or for the mental health board. And he's not a member of the mental health board, but frequently attends and has continued to be engaged with it. I talked to Supervisor Hovde from Bloomingdale Township, and we talked for a while, but he's unable to attend tonight because the mental health board in Bloomingdale Township is actually meeting. So his conflict is exactly what we're talking about. So I could relay some of what he had to say as well. So there's a few things you have that was in your packet. 2 of them came from Carrie Lynn. One is what the resolution would be for us to place the referendum, and a memo describing the overall process that we go through from tonight through standing it up if we were to achieve that, if we got all the way through to approving a mental health board and getting it succeeding on the ballot and then standing it up. So that's kind of the process document outlining what we would all go through. There were 2 other items that were in your packet, and those came from Mr. Murray. Those are documents kind of describing in greater detail what's viewed as the need for the mental health boards, a little bit more, some process information and experiences of other townships in going through the mental health board. So I will turn it over to Mr. Murray in one moment to kind of give them a chance to kind of describe what they've been through in Bloomingdale, what they've done, and I can add, like I said, some of Supervisor Hovde's comments to that. But what I would like to start with first is kind of describe where we've been so far, what we've been doing in the space of mental health in Lisle Township so far. In 2017, we did stand up a summit to talk about the extraordinarily high rate of suicides we were seeing in youth in the township and in surrounding areas. And that summit ultimately turned into a coalition, the Sea Youth Coalition, that brings together parents, advocacy groups, nonprofit organizations, and the schools and practitioners of mental health together to work on how do we reduce the stigma, how do we put policies in place that deal with mental health and avoid suicide. At the same time, we've been growing a lot of relationships with organizations, other governmental bodies, and nonprofit organizations that do work similar to us, both in mental health space as well as other services we provide. And one common area that we all talk about is mental health. That even when we talk about our financial assistance programs and our food pantry, the other organizations that do similar work to us talk about that their clients typically have a high rate of mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and a lot of other things they're trying to serve them with, along with their food insecurity, along with financial assistance and financial need. So it's a common thread through everything that we do. I do want to share one story. At the beginning, at the summit for the coalition, our kind of our launch point, our participant from NAMI, DuPage, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, told a story that I thought was really important to understand why services around mental health are so needed. And it was more of a kind of a analogy. So if somebody is standing next to a river, right upstream, right at a waterfall, and they see somebody coming down the river who's in stress and duress, can't get out, they jump in, pull them out, and talk to them. And while they're talking, another person comes down the river. Now the two of them jump in together and pull them out. And you stand there together, pulling people out of crisis for a long time. It takes one person to walk upstream then and start to figure out, why are people falling in? And rather than wait to pull them out at the last minute, if you go upstream of the problem in crisis and get to where people are falling in the river and stop them there, that's what mental health services do. You try to catch people upstream of crisis before they enter that place where there's suicide ideation, and help them before we're so far down a path that it can result in death. So wanted to share that. I found that really powerful, and it stuck with me these last 3 years. And where we are now, obviously there's a lot going on. It can be easy to not want to make big changes in a time of chaos like we're in now with COVID, with protests, with police reform calls. But I think truly the mental health board and the support of mental health services is timely, in that it's actually demonstrated a greater need currently for services, for support, and for the agencies that can use this kind of support. So it's a really difficult discussion. I understand of like there's a lot of facets to this discussion. We all like believe that we want to help people. That's why we're here. But at the same time, there's another side to this. There's a financial impact. There are things that we will need to discuss. But I want to keep in mind that we are here to talk about placing the referendum, that it's not our job to stand up the mental health board unless the electors choose it. So our job would be to place a referendum on the ballot to allow the electors to make that choice. So with that, I'll turn over to Mr. Murray, and he can describe a lot of their experiences in Bloomingdale, so you have some perspective of what's been happening nearby.
Well, first of all, I wish I could be in the room with you in person. Feel free to interrupt me at any time with a question. I've been involved with this like 7 years. The one thing I want to say is you're not going to be alone. I feel confident that if you decide to put the referendum on the ballot, it will pass. And you're not going to be alone, because there's 60 mental health boards already existing in Illinois. About half the state is covered under community mental health boards. In DuPage County, Bloomingdale Township is the only one that has a mental health board. I know our intention as a group was to do this on a grassroots level. That's what we did, because I've been on the school board that had to put a referendum up, and I know no governing body likes to suggest even the possibility of a tax increase. But I have the good news. When I was on the school board, we had to ask for a increase of $500 a year per taxpayer and per household, and it passed. What your mental health board referendum is, what our committee is suggesting, is $37 a year per household. So it's really a very modest increase. And that modest increase will do so much to alleviate and provide access to people in your community. You will not be actually setting up any bureaucracy. Your mental health board will actually be a funder. Mental health boards are called funders of last resort. And of course, the great thing about townships and our local governments is that the bureaucracy is way less. If you would call the county health department, and we have a great county health department with many dedicated professionals, you discover there's a waiting list. As a matter of fact, the only people that can get mental health services, you have to be on Medicare. And even then, the amount of the service that's available is very limited because of a shortage of therapists. The biggest supporters when we began our campaign, and it started as a League of Women Voters study, the brochure that you got is an excerpt from that study adapted to your township. But the biggest supporters were our police chiefs. The very first person that allowed me to collect signatures and our group to collect signatures was the police chief in Bloomingdale. And the first day when we went at the National Night Out with the police department, we got 200 signatures, and from there we went on to get all we needed to get on the ballot. One other thing that I would tell you is that, as mentioned, you're not advocating for it. You're just putting it on the ballot. But one thing I would hope to set up for you as board members and the community as well, and we would do a series of these, but I would like you to meet representatives. There is a Community Mental Health Board Association, experts that would inform you so you could give accurate information to your residents about what it would mean. And the other thing I'd say is there's a great deal of flexibility. You're going to choose, your community is going to choose what to fund, and there is a tremendous amount of need. It has to be in the area of mental illness, addiction, and developmental disabilities, and all of them have compelling and deep needs, but each community's needs are slightly different. One of my personal areas that I discovered is something called the PUNS waiting list. Has anybody ever heard of the PUNS waiting list?
I have a son on the PUNS waiting list.
Okay, then I don't need to say anymore. The first 2 or 3 years when I talked about this, I'd break down in tears when I talked about the PUNS waiting list. What the PUNS waiting list is, it's about 6 or 7 years now to get services from the state. Is that correct?
I think that's a little longer than it actually is, or that our experience was, but
Yeah,
actually significantly longer. But.
That long, and I'm glad to hear it's better. At least 5 or 6 years ago, that's what it was.
Less,
And
yeah.
the PUNS waiting list is, if you have to get state help, it is not directly applied. You have to go through a very lengthy and cumbersome process. So I think right now, I'd like to open it up to you for questions. I would say there's one thing I know about each of you from canvassing. And when we canvassed for the Mental Health Board, we went in every neighborhood. I'm sure all of you have canvassed, or I would imagine all of you have canvassed. And we had universal support. And one thing I learned from that canvassing is every single one of your residents in your community is going to be affected in some way by these issues. So this is a true community-wide program. And one more thing, and then I'll ask for questions. We did add, I see you have an outstanding youth program. We did add 2 additional counselors to our youth program funded through the Mental Health Board. And we have social workers now in every single police department in Bloomingdale Township. And that is lowered in Glendale Heights. Their police chief said there, he doesn't know if it's because of the social worker, but the number of their domestic abuse calls fell 50% in the first year alone by having that social worker. So what questions do you have?
No.
I'm hoping you'll ask questions that would keep you from voting yes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Murray, for being with us. It's, I have a lot, I think. And I mean, I guess my first one is, who is served by a community mental health board?
It would be limited to the residents of Lisle Township, okay? And it would be, you would decide what is funded, okay? And they can be either profit or nonprofit. Typically, it's nonprofit organizations. We started a medically assisted drug treatment program in Bloomingdale Township through a community mental health clinic, Access Health. And we're serving 30 people a year. I think we probably save some lives. We put extra counselors in our 3 schools. So it can only function for the benefit of Lisle Township residents.
And who directs the money? I'm not sure I understand that. You said he, meaning Mr. Tams. Wouldn't it be the mental health board that would be directing the taxes raised, where they are spent?
Well, the mental health board would, they would gather the information. They would conduct the grant applications and take care of the process. But the township board sets the levy, usually at the advice of the mental health board. So your township board will have the final say with anything of the mental health board. They operate as an adjunct, as a committee of your board.
So to explain a little bit of what Supervisor Hovde told me is, so that he and the board appointed the mental health board.
Right.
And then the mental health board puts together their request for a levy. It comes to us as the township board, and then we get to change it or approve it and push it forward.
Okay, but if we,
Actually, yeah.
sure. No, go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
So Supervisor Hovde told me that in their case, Bloomingdale Township Mental Health Board put forward a levy of $650,000, which was much less than the 0.15% that's allowed. And he actually increased it a little bit to add in a little bit of costs that the township would incur, that they would be able to get some reimbursement for. As the mental health board has no staff, nothing paid, they don't have anyone working on their behalf. So the township staff picked up a little bit of just being able to process some stuff and put stuff on the website and some of those small details, so that was handled by the township. And then as applications are made, the mental health board makes the decision collectively to fund or not fund projects that are presented.
So it's to fund not-for-profit organizations in your community that are already providing mental health services to the community.
Not-for-profits, including governmental bodies also. So any kind of organization that's not for profit. That's where the police organization.
You can also
Supervisor
fund,
Hovde talked about a lot about the police work that they do. They have agreements, and they're the way Supervisor Hovde talked about it also was that they're generally referred to as grants, but they actually, in my federal experience, would be more of cooperative agreement, where you have essentially a contract for service, where you have this many hours or this many people or this something set, a performance metric set. So it's not just a grant and you do stuff with it. It has a specific performance metric associated with the money that will be provided. So their biggest success, he felt, was with the police departments in providing funding for social workers who can respond in the moment, rather than the officers being the ones to have to act as social worker on the scene. And he felt that was one of the most successful programs, and he's got a lot of really positive feedback from the police chiefs that they're working with.
When would a social worker be called on instead of a cop?
I think they would always respond with the cup, and they classify their calls as mental health calls when they come in.
Well, I can tell you that if you ask your police department, I encourage you to talk with your police and fire department. At least 50% of their calls are associated with mental health issues. And that surprised me, especially with the fire department. Every call that the social worker gets follows up and calls them the next day if there's any possibility that it's mental health related. And then they do counseling. I want to say that you could have a director, and many mental health boards do have a director, because it is a very complex system, and that the whole system of mental health, addiction, and developmental disabilities requires a level of expertise just to know where to go and what to do. You don't have to do that. And we actually are, in your packet is a list of what every mental health board in the state levied in 2018. And we would hope that you would levy about $37 for the average household. Bloomingdale Township is levying about $18. You can always rebate if you don't use the money in the first year.
Who is we? Who is we? Who is we?
We is you as a township.
No, you said we would like $37. Who is we?
Oh, we is the grassroots committee, okay, that we originally wanted to do this as a grassroots campaign, but it's impossible to collect signatures to put this on the ballot. That's how we did it in Bloomingdale Township. We
Okay.
put it on the ballot.
Okay. Why did you pick Lisle Township as opposed to any other township?
Well, we hope to have every township in DuPage have a mental health board. We think it's something that's needed throughout our county. We think it's something that's needed throughout our state. This whole movement goes back to the Community Mental Health Act of 1963.
So Ed, to partially address your question also, this is something that the supervisors have discussed all together. Mr. Murray has actually spoken to Supervisor Toman as well and been to Downers Grove. My Supervisor Hovde has spent a lot of time talking to all of us at our monthly meetings. And the feeling was that this was going to be a grassroots campaign, and it would be done through petition. So now that COVID came into play, the request has been coming to all of us saying, would you be willing to put this on your agenda to discuss?
So the other townships in DuPage County are having the same discussion at their board level?
I don't know if everyone is. I know a couple supervisors said they weren't going to put it on their agenda yet. But a lot of us were at least having discussions.
In the funding, because they present a request to the board and the board says yay or nay, but then they don't approve the contracts with the not-for-profits, and can some of those contracts be with profit organizations? So I guess that's two questions.
Okay, I can answer that. First of all, there are some you can contract with for-profit, like some therapists. You might have a child that has this or an adult who has a very specialized case, and there might be only a private practitioner that could handle that case. Some cases are very complicated. We want to make sure that every resident has access to the best treatment possible. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you do your contracts. We have 8 different types of grants listed in our application. Next year's application for grants comes out on Monday, actually on the 15th. I'd encourage you to look at that, the grant application that we prepared. It's based on what the other mental health boards have done.
Mr. Murray, why approach the township level and not the county level?
Okay. there, first of all, and some of the mental health boards are on a county level, but our townships are as big as most of the rural counties. And the goal of this is to have it be community-based. And quite frankly, if I walk into your township office, I'm going to have a totally different experience and feeling than if I go in and apply to the county for aid, like for SNAP. If I go to your food pantry, it's a different experience than applying for on the county level. And each community is different. Each township has different needs. A lot of times, like Bloomingdale Township, we're kind of on the far end of the county. We feel like we get left out a lot of times. So we,
Every geography feels that way.
My next question is then, Mr. Murray, if Lisle Township were to enact a mental health board and DuPage County was also to enact a mental health board, would one supersede the other? Would one end? Or I was trying to understand the language of how it's structured, or would members who fell within Lisle Township then be taxed for both the county and the township mental health board?
okay. The county cannot have a 708 mental health board because it has a community, a county health department. They could have something called a 553 board. I believe that's the correct number. In fact, they may get a levy from that. I'm not, that it's hard to parse through their accounting form, but no, you can never be double taxed. No one else can set up a mental health board covering your area once you have one. Okay.
Okay, then I find that the appendix 1 is a little misleading because you list counties and then the 708 tax, the 377 tax, the 553 tax, the number of residents, and then per capita. And under DuPage County, you list none. And it looks then to be leading us to believe that there's no mental health funding for our residents in DuPage County. Is
So I
that
think the
not
point of
accurate?
that is county-wide. So the first chunk are where there are county-wide, and if you keep scrolling down, then it's the ones that are just townships and just municipal.
Yes, I realize that there's only, what, 8 townships listed, but the question I have is, when I at first glance, it looks like where it says none would lead me to,
There is not a 708 board for,
and you're saying it's not one because it cannot be one, because we have a public health department?
I believe he's making a technical distinction on the type of funding versus the fact that other people may or may not be collecting funding for these purposes.
Thank you.
I think that's and I think that's where you're saying people are collecting, or I believe that's it. And he's saying, no, they're not, because there's not this particular distinction. Is that a misinterpretation? I apologize.
And that was my second question, because that was back to my first question, or my second question was, why not at the county level? And you're saying DuPage County cannot have one of these funding sources or these mental health boards ever?
that's correct. That is actually correct.
And the reason they cannot is because their mental health is structured under a different avenue? I'm not sure I understand.
It's structured. I'm not sure I could, I'm not sure I know the exact legalese, but when you do a 708 mental health board, these funds are dedicated and can only be used for mental health, addiction, and developmental disabilities. The county health board, they have discretion on where they can put their funds. And in fact, I would guesstimate that over the last 10 years, they've had a 30% real decrease in funding, not in actual dollars, but when you factor in inflation, because they have a lot of responsibilities and the revenue is not growing. So
I feel that
fund mental health very well.
I feel that for me to have the depth of knowledge, the perspective I would need is I like to know how or where services are provided and at what level. And like I said, unfortunately, at first glance, this says none, which would lead someone to believe that we have to enact a board like this in order to provide those services. But I should also let you know I'm very passionate about mental health. It's a priority in my family and in my life. And I've attended mental health-based presentations at the county and had different interactions there. So I don't want you to think I'm asking this to counter in any way, shape, or form. Mental health is important to me, but I want to make sure I'm very clear when I go to structure a new taxing levy or the ability to, that I understand what's already being funded to our members and then how that money will be spent to our members, our residents. The other thing of my concern is when you say that they have the ability to help fund entities like the police department, our residents are served by multiple police departments, and many of those police departments serve not only Lisle Township, but they serve other township members as well. And that becomes an interesting sticking point for a number of our shared services or our contributions when it comes to providing services for our residents, such as like when it comes to the shared rides and things like that. So I understand the bigger picture. I understand the intent here. My other question is, if not on this ballot, this is not an end all one and done, right? There are other opportunities to place this on a ballot in the future. What would those be? How would that timeline play out? If this were not to be on this ballot, what would be the next steps?
Well, anytime there's an election, you could put it on the ballot. You know, there's two groups of people that are impatient, young people and old people. So I must admit I am impatient, and the November, putting it on the November ballot would allow you ample time, if it passes, to do the preparation work for your levy and your planning and your learning, because when do you turn your, so that would give you a big lead up and help you in doing a professional job.
So to piggyback on what Mr. Murray said about the levy, in talking to Supervisor Hovde, one of the things he said is theirs did pass in 2017 during the municipal. And you have 90 days to appoint, or 60 days to appoint the members. And then they had to hurry up, figure out bylaws, get everything in order, and propose their tax levy really quickly because of the timing of the election.
But obviously it's able to be done because they did it. So
yes, exactly. But like that was his one thing that he was like, I wish that part would have been different because it would have given us more time to think and plan through it better.
I like to plan. You guys know, how I like order and planning. True enough with me. The question is still on the table. When would be the next consideration on a ballot?
It could go on the municipal, it could go on the following.
And
Carolyn, am I correct that it can be any election cycle, correct?
Correct.
Yes, and it can
unfortunately,
either
we
be
have to
initiated.
pass reading Carrie Lynn's opinion, we either have to pass it tonight or potentially at the July meeting. So we don't necessarily, I mean,
we
again,
can.
I'm just making you aware of this. We don't have to
into
August
July
or something. We're kind of getting this in the 11th hour. Again, perhaps that's because of COVID or other extending circumstances, but.
Let's make sure we're clear. It's the 11th hour to get on the November ballot.
Correct.
Not
Absolutely.
the 11th hour to ever explore funding a mental health board.
Correct.
Right. So that's why I want to make sure we're very clear.
Right.
The next election, would that be in spring of
February
of 20?
February, and then April.
Well, February's
we
only
don't have a primary in Lisle Township usually.
Oh, okay.
So if we do not put it on the November ballot, we're really only delaying this by about 5 to 6 months for a referendum question on the ballot.
Right.
Well, you're not delaying the funding at all, are you?
No, I'm the
No,
question.
you're just delaying the question. You're just delaying putting the question to the voters.
Keep in mind, there's also another funding, tax increase on the ballot this fall as well. So I'm not sure if it's advantageous to have this on as quickly either, because this would be multiple tax increases. And I'm referring to the state asking for more money per person too. Are we afraid that might be a concern or across?
Right.
As well. So. Is people frozen?
No. Punt.
I just want to make sure that we're very clear, that, like I said, that we're very clear that not putting it on the ballot is not aligned to the idea of not funding mental health.
Okay.
That it really, you're presenting it to us today in this fashion because COVID changed the process you were going to use to potentially get it there. Unfortunately, COVID has also changed the process that I would normally rely on to convey information to our township members, and that is our town meeting. And so unfortunately, we're in two no-wins in that sense. And so I have always relied on feedback and presentation and information at our town meetings or over a structured amount of time for feedback. And unfortunately, COVID now, according you heard our earlier conversation, is it has taken that away. And I'm sad that COVID has taken away your opportunity to do a grassroots petition to this, because I feel that grassroots petitions really do show a community's intent and help some momentum. So I want to be sure I understand the framework of what I'm asked of tonight, and to also understand how that framework, if it's an option to expand it to the future, what that looks like.
So one item to consider in discussing timing of referendum, and this is purely because I watched another large discussion on referendums, is voter turnout and the difference between how many people show up and vote in November versus how many people will show up in a municipal. So there was a great deal of discussion in other bodies about primary versus general for some questions. And we may be similarly posed a question of, are you putting it on at a time when a lot of people are coming out? Are you putting it on in a time when less people come out? Maybe the less people is more passionate people about it. People will come out if they feel passionately about it either way. I think you can make a lot of different arguments both sides, but just having witnessed a similar conversation about timing of referendums, I just want to throw that out there for consideration.
I will tell you, my only hesitancy is that I would like some more I don't know the word I want, qualified data and quantified data regarding to specific funding in our township for mental health, specific funding that's already in existence from DuPage County, the need of this, and that the catalyst for why, the impetus for why. I heard COVID used as a reason, and I believe that that's a forecasted reason, and I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying this grassroots movement started prior to COVID, and what were those numbers? What were they seeing? What's a spike that makes this inherently needed as an increase to tax to our constituents now?
Can I answer some of those questions?
Please.
You have about 8,000 people in Lisle Township, and according to the county health department, 7.5% that don't have any insurance. 1 in 5 people each year will have a mental health crisis, and 1 in 7 suffer from chronic disease. A lot of that information is in the packet that I sent to you. And I should also want to backtrack a little bit and say that we contacted Karen Ayala. She was part of our initial study. Karen Ayala is head of the county health department. And by her own admission, there are a lot of people that fall through the cracks in terms of mental health services. A lot of people have high deductible insurance policies. And stigma, which was mentioned in the comments, is another reason people don't seek healthcare for mental illness or addiction. And those are things that are so much more powerful when they're addressed on a community level. And
Mr. Murray, I would agree with you. I believe fully in township government. That's why I sit where I do. And I believe in meeting the needs of our residents at this level. But I also need to make sure I measure that and I can explain why I'm asking any of my neighbors to increase their taxes. So the general numbers, I see the general numbers and I'm sure that we can find more. In the meantime, you know, if we can provide some additional data to that end, and I could see some type of long-term timeline as to the if-then, Supervisor Mullen, you know, if in July the referendum goes up, then what happens? If it does not go for referendum by board direction, what are the other options? And when would they go for a vote again? And possibly if we could try to find some kind of, any kind of supporting information about what funding amounts are available to our residents from the county, or at least what the county percentage is for mental health in their budget, anything. Give me
I
anything.
do have those figures also.
Well, I can work with a combination of the county and then our partners in the coalition, because we work closely with a lot of either direct providers or the nonprofit organizations that have some data on that. I would say one challenge in data will be aggregating it at a township level, because there's a lot of things that aren't tracked to that level. So I think the county, we probably can get some of that broken down to us specifically. In terms of need and some of the other services that may contribute, the level at which it's tracked, I'll have to work with others on to see if we can get it there. You know, a lot of like the reason you get big data, right, of like, you know, generally 1 in 5 is partially because it's not tracked down to that level, and it's something that are part of national studies or wide studies. Some of it is that it's also significantly underreported. So understanding need is one area that's really difficult to pinpoint. I can work with a lot of the other agencies that we know and work with already to try and get as much as I can. But especially things like suicides are typically underreported. And that's one thing that we've kind of struggled with as the coalition. But there is also some data, I think, from the coroner that we can pull specific to suicide and specific to overdose and some of the changes that they've seen over time. I've seen the coroner do several good brief outs on data like that. So I know they have a good collection of data.
And then if we could find out what other townships are considering this for the November election, and if they were petition or based or board directed, if you could discern that for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy, I'm going to hope I can change your mind here. To me, and this may just sound cynical, this sounds to me like an opportunity to divert the state's responsibilities down to the counties and townships, right? Like the state is a horrible payer for any home health care, anything like that. If you have a business in this field, you're waiting a year to get paid by the state for their obligations for services to citizens. And there are organizations already in this community. What I'm hearing is that we're just being asked to be a new funding source, right? Because we're not providing the service. We're just being asked to be the new funding source because there's organizations, not-for-profits already in the community that are providing services to people. It's just, we're being asked to be the new money man. And I think I'm not interested in voting to put this on the ballot as a referendum. I'll just say that right out front, because I feel like that's just enabling the state to continue to make really terrible decisions from a budgetary standpoint, to candidly piss away people's money. And the people who are getting hurt are people in, ultimately it's the taxpayers, but the state should be funding this stuff to take care of the residents of the state of Illinois. And they're not. They're doing a terrible job.
Mike, actually, that's kind of the point I was trying to make with the county, right? If the county is already a funding source and it's already their obligation, right? If we can't have the boards, the county is supposed to be responsible, then I need to know that information of what they're already providing.
Right.
And if the shortfalls at the county level, that discussion is why I asked why Lisle Township and not DuPage County. So.
Right. But it shouldn't even be the county on some level. There's the stuff that the state is responsible for. They're just falling down on, and it's a shame.
Mike, to your point, one of the things I will look at is where there is differentiation in state responsibility, county responsibility, and 708 responsibility, to see if that helps address some of this. Because I think of it in terms of like the emergency assistance and general assistance is a stopgap program, and it's kind of niched to fill a gap that exists in all other programs, right? So if 708 boards have more of that niche, or there's at least some of that niche, and we get to set, well, the mental health board, and one of us from the township board sits on the mental health board. We get to set bylaws that could exclude things that are covered elsewhere.
Right.
I think one big area, I have a friend who works as a lobbyist in homeless issues, and she actually, I was randomly talking to her yesterday, and she lives out in DC, and she was actually telling me she was here a couple of years ago working on issues around those who are uninsured and on Medicaid, and those who had no Medicaid access, and how they fit into the mental health board structure, because they were trying to work through some of those issues of how are different people covered and addressed, and how can mental health boards fill those gaps where there are really, like, there is no one responsible for helping to support that person. So I can see where Carolyn probably will need some little bit of help with this too, where those lines are set, and where there's overlap, where there's distinction. Would that be helpful?
I think so. But on some level, right, that the not-for-profits that are in the community, there's nothing stopping, the people who are behind this grassroots movement from starting a 501c3 organization to fund more mental health stuff. The Friends for Lisle Township goes out and raises money from businesses and individuals in the township to, help fund the food pantry.
And mental health boards can do that too. They can, once they're stood up, they could do exactly the same thing, where you create a not-for-profit that's attached, and they do fundraising through that. Therefore, it could adjust or the reliance on the levy.
Could I address some of Michael's concerns? Because there are certainly concerns that we heard expressed in Bloomingdale Township. And mental health boards cannot duplicate funding that comes from other sources. It is, in fact, a funder of last resort, as I said. And many of the nonprofits are not able to devote as much time to their good work as because of the amount of time they have to devote for fundraising. And a lot of those sources that nonprofits do work in are not covered under any other types of programs. NAMI DuPage is strictly a kind of a voluntary organization. That's an agency where we fund job training. We fund job training with Ray Graham. Those are things that neither the county or the state would ever fund.
I'm confused by what you're saying, Mr. Murray, because having a special needs son, we're actually working with the state, and they're actually providing job training and job coaching. He's participating in that. So if
Well,
you're saying that they don't provide it, and
spoke as far as that, but we fund like the transition programs from our high school.
yes, my son just aged out of the one at Naperville North.
Yes, and it's a very complicated process, as you know. And we work with the Ray Graham Jobs Program to help if your son were in Bloomingdale Township, we would help him find a job through the Ray Graham program.
There's other programs through the state that are currently, that actually accomplish that.
Well, I know Ray Graham.
Started today, so I'm very happy. And I love Ray Graham. I know Ray Graham. I grew up near their center in Elmhurst. It was actually my wife's elementary school when she was very young. So I'm very familiar with these organizations. My son went to Little Friends. It doesn't mean I think we need 9 new taxing bodies in the county to address. Again, I'm just the clerk. I don't have a vote, so you don't need to compute to make me think of anything. I'm just, like I said, I'm someone who uses these, and I'm hearing these aren't available, and there can always be more. I'm not saying there can't be.
What that does is fill in parts of the puzzle for their funding. Parts of the puzzle.
So, knowing that, I think part of the reason we've successfully worked together is because we all like data, and you at least seem to share the same passion I do for spreadsheets. I would like to just say, I think I understand Kathy and Mike's concerns that they've expressed so far, and the way to move forward with, at least with those specific concerns, is to go back, do a little extra research and data collection to be able to present at the next meeting to you. Here's how we understand it, here's what we found, and just continue the discussion on those points then. And I understand that you still have some core concerns, right? But I would like to at least follow up on these things for you.
I would like to hear from Trustee Allen and Trustee Reedy, their thoughts as to, Mike, Trustee Tams and I have kind of spoken our piece, but I would like to hear what the other 2 trustees, what their thoughts are on this.
Yeah, if I could chime in here. I know we're dealing in very chaotic times right now with the COVID pandemic, the civil unrest. We have record unemployment. We're losing big and small businesses like flies. And given the grim look on the economy and the fact that Illinois already has far too many taxing units of government, I just would not be in favor of having anything to do with creating another government body. We have the DuPage County Health Department. As I'm learning tonight, there are other entities out there working on the same thing. And at this time, I would not vote to put any more burden on our taxpayers than we already have. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, no, you know what? I think you guys make good points. I mean, honestly, I think it's crazy times. I think suicide's up. I think domestic violence is up. I think mental health is a huge issue. I mean, I don't think anyone's under more scrutiny than our police right now. If there was an opportunity to fund something that could help take away some of these things, especially to our law enforcement with social workers, I mean, I think that's huge. I think that it's a serious problem right now. So, I mean, I'm in favor of it. I know Illinois has a lot of taxing bodies. I mean, our job is to not put more of a burden on, our constituents with taxes, but we also have a, duty to represent the people and see what they want. I mean, these are the people that are out there every day. And if mental health is hitting this many people, I think we have a right to have them have a voice in it. And I really think it should be on the ballot. And, if they don't want to vote for it, then don't vote for it. But I think that mental health is a huge issue across the board, whether it's people rioting and burning the city, which is scary, or like I say, our law enforcement that are so afraid to do their job because of being under extreme scrutiny. So I think that it's a huge issue, and I want to see it move forward. That's it.
Are there any other specific concerns that I could do further research on that you guys would need any more information or data. Like, I hear where everyone's coming from. I understand this is still going to be difficult, but I wouldn't feel like I'm doing my job if I don't bring back answers to all of your questions and be as thorough as possible.
No, and I appreciate that, Mary Jo. I know I usually leave you with a laundry list of homework, so
My to-do list was in.
sorry.
Okay. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Do appreciate it. We will continue.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, sir.
Question.
Thank you.
And I look forward to meeting you in person.
Someday.
As well.
And by the way, no matter whether or not this board, no matter what they do, people appreciate that people are trying to help. And I think everyone here wants to help people resolve mental health. I think, again, my opinion is, and again, I don't have a vote in this, but I would typically say is, I think we need to develop comprehensive plans.
That's the goal of the community.
Part of my
mental
goal
health.
is, this seems like patchwork, township by township, we fit it in there. And that's one of my concerns, knowing that there's these other things that, you know, we work through and we use. And yes, it is challenging. Yes, it does take time to work through them. And I'm always happy to help people, and people come, you know, to take the time to do it. But it's, things could be smoother, but I'm not sure another taxing body does that. And
I appreciate your concern. That's the goal of the Community Mental Health Act of 1963, was to have local agencies that develop comprehensive plans for their community. And the taxes, my taxes were $16 last year. So I don't think it's a big ask, but
you've asked for more in this case, and everybody's making a small ask all the time. And those small asks and the asks are growing and becoming more challenging. As someone who, as of the last few weeks, is becoming unemployed, let me tell you, I look at all these things and I say, everybody wants, and again, everybody wants help. There's stresses involved in that, and everything else we've discussed about my life, there's stresses in it.
certainly.
So what I'm saying is, it's got to be more comprehensive, again, because we're used to having to go to this guy for this and this guy for that. And this is another one of those things versus a comprehensive plan that where you go and or maybe go to 2 agencies and it works versus 10 agencies. So there. So is that Jimmy?
Bobby.
It's Bobby. Okay.
I'll sign off because I know you guys have more to do.
Thank you,
Just
Mr.
talking
Murray,
about
for
my
joining
Bobby.
us.
I don't know if I know how to sign off, so maybe you have to do it for me.
I don't
Move your
think,
mouse, it's the bottom right hand corner of the screen. It says leave. You don't have to. I'm just saying that's where it is. Bottom right hand corner.
should be red end,
I'm on a laptop.
should be end in the bottom right, a
Oh.
big red button.
Okay.
I can put you in the waiting room while you figure it out. Okay. All right. Thank you guys for that. Your comment on comprehensive plan is really interesting. Typically, other comprehensive plans that I have worked within are more around like watershed master planning and things like that. And you get a lot of organizations together to work together to create a big plan. That's really
what can happen
interesting.
here as well.
I agree. I think that's a really interesting concept, and
Yeah, no, because I can tell you, we are
moving a mountain, but
phone call for this. It's a phone call for, you know, and these are all in to create a whole nother, that's, my gosh, we need to, and if we could simplify, we could define what could be done and you know, get things done versus you go here, you go there, you know, it's hours of our lives, you know, worth the investment, but.
I get that. But I will follow up on all of this for you guys. I get where everyone's coming from. I think I'm pretty clear that I really, really am passionate about this and really would believe it's helpful. But I will put together probably a spreadsheet to to provide what you guys have requested, and we can continue the discussion in July. But like Bob pointed out in the memo, that July is our last opportunity to get it on November's ballot. But as to Kathy's, your request, we can put together the continuing timeline
Well,
for that.
and then if we're going to put it, let's say on a ballot, then we have an idea, hey, this is why we're forming, and tell people that's why we did it. Versus someone came and asked us for money, we thought we'd throw it out.
Yeah, and frankly, a lot of the plans were thrown into disarray when they approached me in May and said, so we can't go knocking on doors. We were really hoping we'd have the opportunity. And the supervisors had all talked about it before, months ago. And we were all told, we're going to try. I mean, I think we talked about it maybe in December, well before COVID, probably earlier than that. And we had asked specifically, like, so what are you guys planning on doing? And they're like, we're petitioning. It gets us a bigger grassroots movement when you petition, right?
Mhm.
But the reality of the situation was, when it came time to actually do the door knocking specific to this cycle, COVID hit. So I get it. All right, we can move forward to next agenda item, which is update on transition to Lakeshore Recycling Services for waste hauling services. So we are inching towards August 1st, which is our transition date between Republic Services and Lakeshore Recycling Services. There has already been a good deal of work on the part of Lakeshore, and everybody who will be serviced by Lakeshore should have gotten a brochure. Did you get yours, Kathy? Yay, okay. Explaining the transition process. And I helped Katie kind of put together and check a lot of stuff and work with Republic to get the transition timing of when bins would be picked up from Republic and when Lakeshore would be depositing theirs. And we've found a few glitches in the system as we're working through it. As people started to get their flyer, Bill got a whole bunch of calls in a couple-day period, and a lot of questions. So we've worked out a few things that we will start messaging on soon. We're trying to time the messaging appropriately. So one of the things that is not necessarily a messaging thing is there's a few areas that we found that never transitioned into Republic when we established our contract, and were being serviced by Groot. And they were surprised that their service was going to change. So we've been turned that over to Lakeshore, and they've prepared a letter that's going out, and they've done a lot of coordination with Groot to be like, this is a contracted area. This is one of those things that there's lines in the sand on. So they're helping us take care of that. The biggest question is stickers, and people want to know what's going to happen to the stickers I've already purchased that have Republic on them. So I did find out from Republic that they will buy back stickers from us. So we will have to do a collection and buyback of people's stickers who have them. And then we will provide all those Republic, and they will then pay us for those stickers. So there would be kind of a dual transaction involved there, because they can't accommodate pretty much everybody individually pinging them. So we'll have to set a time period that we'll buy back from people. Republic then will buy those back from us and reimburse us. And then, go ahead.
Mary Jo, when you set up that buyback, can you make sure there's some type of a COVID clause in that? In terms of if we were to move back to full shutdown, I know that there typically is a buyback timeline when they've done it in the past.
Right.
It's been like 30 days or 60 days. But if we move back to a level 1 and we're closed, can you try to make sure that there's some kind of provision for that in that buyback?
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you.
Scary point, but a great one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I will definitely do that. And then on the other side, we've been working with Lakeshore that if there are people who fall through the cracks in the buyback, that we can work with them post transition also. So I think we'll have a plan in place there as well.
Would they ever allow for a situation where if a resident used the wrong sticker, that can be somehow in the buyback program or not?
So what we're talking to Lakeshore about is if there are people who don't buy back and continue to use their stickers, that within a certain time frame, that they would just go ahead and pick those up.
Okay.
And leave them a note and leave them a flyer.
They were very generous in the Lakeshore when they changed in the Lisle, because people had them or they had a few extra. Again, maybe the people on the route just decided not to make a big deal for the first couple pickups. But I do know some neighbors saying, "Oh, I put one on," or they had an extra one in the drawer they didn't buy back. They threw it on it next to it. And I know Lakeshore, when they did our neighborhood, 4 years ago, I think, if not systemically, individually, the route guys were really pretty, about it. So,
Yeah.
Well, again, it kind of ties back again to COVID. My concern is that someone who's elderly, who has more than enough stickers and doesn't want to go purchase more stickers at a Walgreens and doesn't want to come to us to exchange them, that we'd allow for some accommodation for them. Because I still think, regardless of what level the state or county says we're at, there are still a number of very a large number of our constituents fall into the risk category.
Right.
And I don't want to have this change affect them at all.
Yes, totally fair. And I'll talk to Lakeshore specific about that as well, because I believe what they did before and what Katie and I have been talking about is that they would accept them for a certain time frame, right? So I think maybe we can kind of negotiate that time frame depending on how things go. And if people were to call also and say, hey, this is my situation, they would make special accommodation for them. They've been very flexible. And I have to say too, we've been having routine intergovernmental meetings within the Lisle area that they've invited me into. And I know the village struggled a little bit with the transition between Republic and Lakeshore. But I have to say that Republic has been easy to work with. They've been trying to transition well. They've been trying to really kind of leave a positive light on the transition, so that's made things a lot easier for us, I think, than maybe the village had experienced. Any other questions about the transition between waste haulers?
None here.
Okay, excellent. With that, we'll move to reports of elected officials. Ed, do you want to talk about anything different?
I don't have much. I think I sent all of you an email with the results of the bids and also a ordinance that I passed that we're going to dispose of 3 pieces of surplus equipment the other day. We've got a 2003 truck and a 1991 International truck and a compressor that we're going to put on government bids. It's an online bid that we've sold surplus equipment before through, and it works very well. We haven't let the micro seal bid out yet because we thought that was a little high. We only got 1 bid on it. As I'm doing more investigation, though, it looks like it may be a reasonable bid when you get done with it, so we may go forward with it. And other than that, we've finished the second brush pickup without incident. Again, that's hard to social distance when you're picking up brush, but the guys have done the best they could, and everything else is progressing as normal.
Thank you. John, do you have anything additional?
All I wanted to do is just add that we had an opportunity to look at some other space. Mary Jo came out and looked at the area, looked at the space. They forwarded us some layouts. The property the area that they were looking at was demised from another tenant that's downsized, and we were looking at opportunities of what it would take to put in the improvements to make it a viable space. My initial thoughts were they were pretty significant, and they would be expensive, and then on top of that, it would be very difficult. It's in the interior of the development. It would be the access for senior citizens it's a long walk. And
And this kind of bubbled up that we got a call from Stelco saying, hey, we have another site inside of the same property that you're currently renting from if you're interested. And we said, we're always open to continue to look until everything is signed off on. We're continuing down the other path still. And we have, it appears that we have some decent amount of comments on the terms for the lease that we're going to work through. But I just wanted to kind of frame that for you guys, that you're not like, what happened? But so
we're still we're waiting for the last. They gave us some information. We forwarded to council, and we were waiting for the results. So that's the end of my report. Thank you.
cool, thank you. I have,
May I ask a question?
yes, of course.
Was there a mosquito abatement that was rescheduled this week? You know,
That falls under us. Yeah, I haven't actually gotten a notification. I saw that the village put out their notice, but I hadn't gotten anything from Clark that they were doing us. They always do us together though. So I haven't, Bill, unless you've heard anything different from Clark. Clark hasn't provided us any notification of when they're going out.
my apologies, Mary Jo, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah, I was just curious, because it seems like they're very sick very early this year. I thought that I'd seen a notice as well, and I wasn't sure if it was Lisle or Lisle Township.
They typically do all of it at once. Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
I did speak with them, and because I hadn't seen that we had actually even paid them yet. We're paying our first two payments with this meeting. And so I had called them, and they said that they were probably going to start spraying within the next 2 weeks. They just hadn't really had a brood or whatever they're calling it, because they don't necessarily spray when you see the mosquitoes. They're predicting when they're going to hatch. So I guess it's on the way.
Okay. Yeah, but I did see the notification from the village. Go ahead, Mike.
I saw they went through 4 lakes last week, probably last Thursday or Friday. I don't know if that was considered a Lisle Spring or a township, but I saw Clark going through 4 lakes last week.
They weren't stopping at the pub?
I was. Hello.
I don't think that's considered either the village or the township. I thought that was private. We don't maintain those roads, so I don't believe that they would go down non-township roads.
Oh, really?
Maybe I was
Interesting.
wrong.
Yeah.
They go through here all the time, Clark.
Yeah, and they're the provider for pretty much every municipality and entity and township throughout the county. They
They're
tried
the only
to validate that at one
vendor.
point. It just wasn't successful in getting everyone on board.
Mhm.
There's only 3 communities in the forest preserve that don't spray. So
They do private spraying.
Right.
true.
Thank you.
So the 2 things that I wanted to mention were demolition of the assessor's office building. Green Demolition said, hey, I think you probably saw a new piece of ornamental lawn furniture appear, Ed. they dropped off their backhoe again.
Yes.
And they're anticipating being out next week to complete it. They think it'll just be a couple days of being on site to finish the grading, get the village out there and do the cutback of the water and sewer, and then they'll be done.
Did you ask the engineer whether we could use the fill?
Yeah, the fill's fine. I told Green Demolition to go ahead and use your fill.
Okay, thank you.
So we're good. So, yay. It was funny. I sent them a note, and like 4 people called me. It's like, hey, we're gonna be there soon. Okay. The next is I'm going to forward a message, and Bob will give you the exact details for the record. But Paula, as the chair of the garden, sent a note letting us know that they got a lot of donations from Wheaton Mulch, and she specifically thanked the Highway Commission as well and Marty for going out and helping with the pickup of all of the supplies from Wheaton Mulch. From Bold Heights Gardens again, we got a lot of plants donated to us. So there's a decent list of donations, as well as Lisle Women's Club and some other organizations that were participating. So she just wanted to go on the record of thanking those organizations for what they did for donating to the garden. And then the last item I wanted to just mention is we all got an email regarding a concern on Plank Road. And Ed, I don't know if you wanted to do any further discussion on that, or since it was addressed to all of us, I thought it's something we should at least acknowledge. And if you had any thoughts.
We put out the speed trailers last week and this week to get an idea about the traffic volume there and the speeds. What I reviewed last week was that what you would typically see on a cut through street of that nature. One of the machines didn't get, it missed one day, so we only had 2 days worth of data, but it didn't look abnormal. I'm going to speak with Lisle to see whether they have any other ideas. I've talked about it before with Lisle. We have lowered the speed limit on our section of Plank. We got the county approval to do that last year. The individual lives on the corner of Plank and he hears a lot of the noise. I'll continue to monitor it and keep you posted, but right now it looks like there's nothing we can do.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Have you put extra patrols in that area? Because I know you do that sometimes.
We have. Well, because we had complaints earlier in the year, and we watched Plank pretty close, because there's a school pickup point at that first street, and the name escapes me right now.
Right, Cliff?
No, the one further down towards that goes north off of Plank, real close to Neighbor Boulevard. And people turning right don't stop for the school bus to stop right there and blow right through. They turn right onto Plank from Neighbor Boulevard. And if the school bus is stopped there with a stop arm sign, they don't care. They just blow that through. So we have had some extra patrols to watch that when school was in session. But other than that, we haven't put any additional patrols.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no other questions, we'll move on to other business. Is there any other business for the evening?
Yes, I'd like to bring something up. I'm all for helping our residents, and given the times that we're going through right now, I'm wondering if there's anything we can do for our residents at the board level, like maybe forgive their taxes for this year, or I know first payments were supposed to already go out and we're waiting on second part. But our reserves are good the way I read it. And I think that'd be a big help for our residents if we could give them a break on our share of the tax bill. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but I think if anything, we ought to do whatever we can to help these people, because we've never been through anything like this in our lifetime. And instead of adding taxes, I'd like to give them some back, or at least give them a break.
It's a good idea. If we can, I'm glad you thought of it. It's a good idea. If we could do it, it would be, it's not going to be a game changer for anybody, but it certainly is a great gesture.
So
That's the way I.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so the legal mechanism by which you could do that would be to do an abatement of all or part of your levy. We would have to see, though.
There is risk right now that we're not going to get everything, so we have to see how that shakes out. But yeah, I think the abatement would be very feasible.
Well, the only problem is we normally have to do that before the first tax bills come out, which may have already happened.
They have.
Yeah.
Michael and I discussed this earlier, and today I had the good fortune to talk to Gwen Henry, the county treasurer. She said, first of all, she said the amount of money that you're going to get in the first two payments, which was, we got the first one on the first and the second, and the next one is supposed to come next week sometime, is going to approximate the same percentage that you got last year. So there's going to be no decrease in the funding to the townships because of late property tax payments. And I asked her whether we could abate the second half of, as Michael suggested, the second half of the property tax payments that are due in September. And of course, being the treasurer and having published all those tax bills, she immediately said, absolutely not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I can understand that. The bills have been mailed. Most of, many of them, the first payments have been paid. And I perhaps the state law could be changed that could permit you to do that. But I think that would be a lot of work on the county's part to change those bills. And maybe John would have better insight into how that process would work and whether it's even feasible.
So what
There,
are other options? Are there any other options? Carrie
there
Lynn?
are, there are options out there. We actually discussed this a number of years ago, but it would be a process in which we'd have to put all the data together, recalculate the tax bill, and then we would actually have to issue individual refund checks to each of the property owners. And they did this in Bloomingdale Township a number of years ago. And one of the problems that they had, interestingly, was there were people that got checks that never cashed them. And they had these surplus funds that they had difficulty with. That was among the number of obstacles that you have to go through. That's one of the problems that are out there. But if it's something that the board was interested in, it's something that can be done.
So who ran those checks? Did the township run them?
Interestingly, and I'm trying to, it was the individual who I think put this together was actually had a dual position. He was a chief deputy for the Bloomingdale Township assessor, and he was actually working for the supervisor's office as well. So he had a unique position. But I will tell you, it has to be done through a coordinated, in my opinion, it has to be done through a coordinated effort.
And it has to be done very carefully. We had a situation come up with the DeKalb Public Library where the library and the city were trying to do this same thing. Instead of an abatement, it was like a rebate. And they had implemented a tax for like a project that was later not going to go through, and just trying to determine the EAV and returning the funds to people and people not cashing their checks. And then people were getting rebates who didn't pay the taxes because the property owner, the tax year had changed, and the county was refusing to get involved with it at that point for DeKalb County. And so the municipality and the library had to come up with staff to try to do it themselves. I think they just decided not to do it because it was such a nightmare.
Well,
No, it's a great idea, but maybe what you could do is reduce your levy at the end of the year to offset that, to help people into the next tax year.
That was my next question, is if we can't do something now, what can we do now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can pass and abate your levy next year. And I would say pass and then abate it, because remember the amount that you're able to extend is going to be based on the average extension over the past 3 years. But you can abate all or part of it just and reduce taxes if you have enough to survive without them. And then that will help people, because you would be doing your levy ordinance in December or going into December. And then, people aren't just, if they're hurting now, they're not going to be out of this by the beginning of next year when the first tax installment comes. So that would be kind of a help going forward for them. So that's something to think about when you do your next levy.
We start those discussions in September, which the reality is it's not that far away.
Right.
And the last thing, if that's something that you wanted to consider, is there are a lot of people that still have their taxes escrowed, so the impact may not be actually affecting them, some of them right now, but it will in the future.
I was
It's a great
surprised to hear,
suggestion. Thank you for bringing it up. I think it's a great discussion to have.
I was surprised to hear Gwen say that the amounts of money being distributed is about the same percentage level of the levies that was last year.
We heard all sorts of like wild ranges of what it could, like how much lower it could be for a while
Right,
too.
right.
That's great.
But I think that's because it would really impact the next installment instead of this one.
This one, yeah, maybe.
Because if, as
The
John
final.
just pointed out, yeah, it's true that most of the people have escrowed their stuff, and so it's just being processed by the mortgage companies from what they've collected over the past year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
any defaults would be prospective.
The new defaults
instead of-
probably started in April, if not March. And so they're paying with my escrow is early, right? So
Right.
through it. So yeah, so now you're right. It'll be the August because they didn't pay in March, April, May, June, July. Now you've missed that, basically that second half payment. That's 90% of what my escrow is. 10% is my property taxes. They're my property insurance. That's a good idea, Mikey.
Mhm.
Get you-
Well, let's entertain it. Let's entertain it for the future if there's nothing we can do now.
Absolutely. And
Very
I'll
good.
give some thought to what else, even if it's not direct financial, what else we can do in terms of like how we provide our services or making sure people are aware of what we do also that would help them supplement if they're kind of hitting a crisis situation.
Right.
Thank you, Mike.
Very good.
Any other business?
Yeah, I've got one thing if I can. Without making a short story really long, assuming it all goes through, we're going to sell our house on the 29th of this month. I'll be moving out of the township at that time. So I think I'm assuming everything's going to go through okay and we won't have any issues with the closing, but that's always a possibility. But if not, then I think what I'll do is if email is okay, I'll formally tender a resignation by email to Mary Jo at that time. So if something comes up in the rest of this month, if we had to have a meeting for some reason or whatever, I'm available for that. But as soon as I would have to by law, I'll do that and kind of close a chapter on my township service.
Been 11 years, Mike?
09, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that, Michael.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Mike.
Yeah.
Although
You will be
Naperville
missed.
Township will have an election too.
Yeah.
I am tragically sad to hear that you might be leaving our township, let alone our board. I have to say, I've enjoyed working with you. Is there a way to possibly schedule a meeting at the end of June in order to, for Mike to tender that as well as for us to acknowledge his service? Is that an option for a reason of a meeting?
Gonna party, Mike.
No, you don't. That's really nice. But
Well, no, I'm
you know,
kind of
certain-
hoping for that back door that we got a number of days, things might change.
yeah.
Mike's,
I'm
Mike's
the optimist,
interests are
Mike.
directly tied to everything we've talked about tonight. And, I admire what you're doing to do the right thing and make adjustments in these times. And like I said, as a guy who's got to make some himself, it sucks. And I think we're all going to miss the hell out of you. So.
Yeah.
You're here.
I'm a huggy person also, so like I'm gonna miss people like say goodbye properly.
We got to get JB to to authorize that. I think I'm a hugger too, but I'm afraid of breaking the law.
Right.
No, thanks for your service, man, for real.
Thank you.
You've been a class act, no joke, so we appreciate it.
Thanks,
Fair
Sean.
And
Well said, Sean.
Mike, I worked with you for a very, very long time, and it was truly an honor and privilege to work with you. I'm really going to be sad to see you go, and your thoughtful address to every issue that came up. It's truly been an honor and privilege to work with you.
Wow. Everybody on this board and its iterations in the 11 years I've been on it has always served because their heart was in it. And this isn't a glamorous thing, and then the pay's not great and the hours are terrible, and no, but everybody involved in the sport has always come at it from a place of their heart being in the right place. So it's been fun for me to fit in and to work alongside people like that. So thanks everybody.
Well, that'll be a big loss, and
Yeah.
not to sound all legal, but you're all going to now ask, what's the process for filling a vacancy in the trustee position? And it's just that you have to appoint someone within 60 days. It has to be a member of the same political party, and if you don't, then it would go to the electors whenever the electors can meet at this point, right? But it's going to be sad to see you go, but we can find out where you're moving and easily run you for office there.
Naperville Township.
You need help.
So I don't know if not everyone lives in the city of Naperville, but you can always watch NC 17, and they actually did a piece on Mike's and his wife having bought the bed and breakfast, which I think they intended to just be a side business, but obviously with everything that's changed in the last 90 days, it's what's changed. And like I said, I admire them, Mike finding a tough solution, because I know you just built that house a few years ago and it was, your dream house.
Yeah. Again, like the pandemic to me is like, this has come up a number of times in conversations with colleagues at work and friends and family, and everybody's generally like, boy, that's awful. And my response genuinely every time is, it's not so bad. I mean, we've got our health and we've got our family and our friends and the people we care about, the people we love, and everybody's okay. Knock on wood. You're no guarantee you're going to be able to say that forever, but everybody's okay. And that's the thing that's important. My wife's healthy, my kids are healthy, my parents are healthy, my siblings are healthy, friends are healthy, count your blessings and don't worry about all that other stuff, which is just, peripheral and trappings, and none of the where you live or what your house looks like really matters. It's all about the relationships in your life.
And you will be in an awesome location in downtown Naperville.
Yeah, that's right. It's not a hardship.
Well,
You will be missed, Michael. You will be missed.
Well, you won't miss me so much. I'll still be texting you.
All right.
so Carrie Lynn, how does restrictions of gatherings affect this? Will it just have to be done through virtual meetings? Because having gone through the process to be appointed myself, it was kind of an overview of a scheduled meeting, and then we were individually interviewed. Would it be that type of structure just in a virtual setting?
Well, it can be. I mean, there's not really a required process by law. If the board says, hey, we all have this great candidate we want, and you don't want to interview anyone else, you can do that. I mean, you would, otherwise, if you want to set up an interview system, yeah, I mean, we could do virtual online interviews and have people in the waiting room or schedule them for different times.
So
We've been pardon me?
good. The way that we've done it in the past here, and of course, different people, different changes we made is basically we would post it, the openings, and then we would ask people between this time frame to submit, their request information to Mary Jo and myself, or whoever Mary Jo would feel that's appropriate to, right? And then we typically did individual interviews. People would come to a meeting, they'd say what they're going to say, and then we would go into an executive session. And I believe, was it executive session where we interviewed people, Mike? I think it was.
Yeah, you can,
yeah.
that's permissible.
For the purpose of filling a vacant office. And then we would have discussions after everybody left and agree, disagree. Those are always interesting conversations. And then we brought on, some excellent people onto the board, even Reedy, but,
I applied once and was rejected for not being qualified.
and by the way, Carrie Lynn, I was rejected at that same time, and they put Vito on. Vito was the so you go back to that 2004, 2000.
There's a blast from the past. Holy cow.
So Vito,
Wow.
so Chuck and Rick were fighting, and so one was in favor, one person was in favor of the other, and the compromise candidate was Vito Monica. You miss Vito, don't you, Michael?
Oh, man. Wow. Those were the days.
Okay, so is it at Mary Jo's direction? Is that how this works? It sounds like there's a lot of different ways we could do it. How structured?
No, the board would come up with a consensus. However, I mean, if the board had a comfortable process established in the past, it was pretty open, that's fine. I mean, you can follow that same process. I mean, the thing that would trigger it is we need to actually see if Mike's closing goes through and if he does resign, and then we could come up, we have 60 days to do it. So you could schedule a number of special meetings. You could establish a 2-week time period for people to apply if they wanted to. You could do interviews. I mean, you do have some time there as long as we keep it moving forward. Mary Jo, yes, would handle the details of coordinating meetings like she has been.
So that said, in the event that one of our members would be stepping down by the end of June, I would be in favor of the structure the board has used in the past to move forward for replacement.
It sounds open. I'm good with that.
Yeah, sure. Me too.
John?
Yeah, that works.
Mike, you still have a vote or voice.
What if, now, if you sell your house at the end of the month, Mike, as soon as you move, is that when he has to resign, or can he stay until the position is filled?
He would need to resign as of the time that he moves out, but the law is that you hold a position until your successor is duly appointed and qualified. So he's not escaping as easily as he would like.
Sure, that's what I thought. So he could still participate in the next couple meetings or whatever, or until we find an appointment, if you were so willing, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that right, Carrie Lynn?
That's surprising, but
That's what the law is.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard that in the past, or that's what I was led to believe in years gone by when a discussion came up about the same thing. And the way I heard it was, until that position is filled, the person resigning is still whatever position it is that he was holding. It might be something to look into, Carrie, but yeah, I think you're right as well.
So then if the trustees don't appoint a replacement within 60 days, it goes to the annual meeting, and the annual meeting may not happen for another year. So he could
Well,
be.
no, I think under the wording of the executive order, it would happen this year. I think that's what the intention is. Nice try, though. I like the way you think.
Yeah, that means I actually might get the vote if you guys can't agree on something. It's like the only time I vote.
Yeah, that's like the one time the township clerk gets to vote if there's a tie.
Yeah.
Right.
You've just been waiting for it, haven't you?
Thus, Vito Monica.
So that's a big bomb, Mike. And everything you said about appreciating everyone else on the board, I very much appreciate about serving with you, truly. So thank you very much.
it's been my pleasure.
Okay, big sigh.
That's the most interesting other business I think we've had in
Yeah, no kid.
well, between your idea of taxes and Michael's resignation. So.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Sad news, Mike. Sad news.
okay, with that, there's your motion to go to audit.
I'll make a motion to go to audit.
I will second that.
And I will ask Bob to take roll call on that.
Okay. I'm gonna go around the screen. Actually, this is almost easier. We're gonna start with Mr. Tams,
Yes.
Mr. Reedy,
Yes.
Mrs. Chapman,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
and Supervisor Mullen.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve the audit?
I'll make a motion to approve the audit.
I will second that.
Any questions, concerns, or discussion on the audit?
None.
Nope.
Back to you, Bob.
Trustee Tams,
Yes.
Trustee Reedy,
Yes.
Trustee Chapman,
Yes.
Trustee Allen,
Yes.
and Supervisor Mullen.
Yes. So with that, the audit has passed. I see no need for executive session for the evening. And at this point, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Tams, would you like to make that a motion, one last motion?
Oh, if I have to, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I think we could do this one by voice. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you again, Mike.
All right.
Talk to
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night.